It happened in Suffolk, near the coast. A tall red house, likely built around 1770, stood alone, surrounded by dark trees. Its windows faced the endless sea, and behind it was a messy little garden. A sign still hung by the door, marking it as an old public house, a place where travelers once ate and slept. One fine spring day, a young Cambridge student named Thompson arrived at that very house. He wanted quiet, a peaceful place to read, to study, and that house seemed perfect. Mr. and Mrs. Betts, the caretakers, welcomed him warmly. They gave him a bright room on the first floor with a view of the sea. Each day passed calmly, mornings full of study, afternoon walks, and quiet evenings with the locals at the bar. Thompson was happy. He planned to stay for a month. One afternoon, he took a different path through the countryside. There, in the distance, something white. A large stone, square with a hole in its center. He examined it curiously, admired the view, the sea, the church towers, glinting windows in far-off homes, and moved on. That evening in the bar, he asked about the stone. Mr. Betts replied calmly, "It's been there longer than anyone can remember." Another man added, "They say it brings bad luck, especially for fishing." But when Thompson asked why, silence fell. Uneasy silence. A few days later, Thompson chose to stay in. It was quiet. Too quiet. Around 3 o'clock, he grew restless and wandered into the corridor outside his room. Everyone was out, likely at the market. He explored a few of the empty rooms. Simple, clean, ordinary. But one door, the southwest room, was locked. That made him curious. He gathered the keys and tried them, one by one. Finally, the lock clicked open. The room was hot, bright, empty of decoration. Only a bed tucked into a corner. But then, something under the blanket moved. Thompson's heart pounded. Someone was lying in the bed, alive. He ran, slammed the door shut, locked it. And just as he did, footsteps coming toward the door. Panicked, he rushed back to his room, locked it behind him. Waited, listened. Nothing. Was it real? A dream? In broad daylight? He stayed another week. Tried to forget. But every time he walked past that door, his ears strained. Silence. And then, his final day arrived. As the horse waited outside with his bags, Thompson ran upstairs. Just one last look. He opened the door, laughed. "It's just old clothes. I was foolish." He turned to leave. Then, movement. He turned. The pile of clothes stood up. It walked. A knife stabbed through its chest. Dried blood down its shirt. Thompson screamed, ran, down the stairs, and fell. Darkness. He woke to Mr. Betts standing over him, angry. "Why did you go into that room? We've been good to you. Now no one will ever stay here again." Thompson apologized. And they told him the truth. A rich man had once lived there. One night, he was attacked by thieves near the village. Held down on that white stone. Killed. His body tossed into the sea. Since then, fishermen avoided that coast. The fish avoided it too. And so the villagers moved the stone. The previous owners locked the room, left the bed, in case the spirit returned. Thompson was the first to see him. Since then, silence. Years passed. Thompson never spoke of it, until one night, when he stayed with me. I showed him to his room. He paused at the door, stared for a long moment, then said softly, "I'm sorry. Something very strange happened to me once." And that is the story he told me. There are stories we hear that fade with time, but some, they stay, etched in the corners of your mind. This is one such story. A story not just of fear, but of a room that should have never been opened. In the remote town of Marlow, surrounded by thick woods and a restless lake, stood an old guest house, forgotten by time and remembered only in hushed whispers. Locals called it the Hollow Oak Inn, a place with peeling paint, moss-covered bricks, and silence thicker than fog. Few visited, even fewer stayed. One misty November evening, a young man named Zion arrived at the guest house. He was a writer looking for inspiration and solitude. The cold air bit his skin as he stepped down from the bus. The inn loomed before him, an eerie silhouette against the dimming sky. One night here, he told himself, just one night. Mrs. Conway, the elderly caretaker of the inn, greeted him with a tight-lipped smile. Her eyes, pale and cloudy, lingered too long on his face. Mrs. Conway. There are 12 rooms, but room 11 is locked. Please don't try to enter. Zion smiled politely. He had no intentions of exploring, or so he thought. His room was warm and cozy, oddly well maintained compared to the rest of the creaking inn. That night, as he sat writing by candlelight, he heard it. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow knocks from the hallway. Zion opened the door. No one. The corridor stretched empty, lamps flickering weakly. He returned to his desk, heart slightly racing. The knocks came again. Knock, knock, knock. This time they came from the wall. He pressed his ear against it. A faint, shuddering breath. A whisper he couldn't understand. The wall backed into room 11. The next morning he asked Mrs. Conway about the room. Her face turned pale. Mrs. Conway, that room hasn't been opened in years, since, the incident. She refused to say more, but the silence spoke volumes. That night, the atmosphere in the inn changed. The air turned dense, cold. The lights dimmed on their own. Zion couldn't sleep. At 2:47 a.m., he got up. Drawn by a force he didn't understand, he stood before room 11. The lock, rusted and old, looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. And yet, it clicked open. The door creaked as he pushed it. Inside was darkness, thicker than any he had seen. A gust of freezing air escaped like a trapped scream. The walls were covered in symbols, strange, twisted runes drawn in what looked like blood. A broken bed stood in the center, and on it, a figure, covered in a white sheet, motionless. Zion stepped back, but the door slammed shut behind him. Locked. The figure sat up. It had no eyes, no mouth, only darkness where a face should be. And yet, it screamed. A sound so vile, so inhuman, it shattered the glass lamp behind Zion. He ran. He clawed at the door, but it wouldn't budge. The thing moved closer, levitating above the ground. Its limbs twisted at impossible angles. And then, it whispered, he opened the door. So he stays. The next morning, Mrs. Conway found room 11 locked. No sign of Zion. His bag, his clothes, even his notebook, all gone. The police found no traces. The room was sealed once again. Years passed. New caretakers came. The inn changed hands, but room 11 remained locked. Until one day, another visitor came, and he heard the knock. Knock, knock, knock. Sometimes doors are locked for a reason, and sometimes what's behind them isn't meant to be seen.